If you are thinking about adding a Helios 44-2 to your filmmaking kit, you have probably seen these shiny, oily looking aperture blades. A lot of people online blame it on a factory logo and warn that it will ruin your images. But after 5 years of servicing hundreds of these lenses, I kept noticing something different. The more I tested them, the more it became clear that the internet's explanation didn't line up with what actually happens in real shooting. So in this video, I recreated that exact oily aperture blade condition on a Helios 44-2, shot it both wide open and stopped down, and showed what really happens. My goal is simple: help you see whether this issue truly affects your images or if it's just a cosmetic detail that's been blown out of proportion. A lot of people say oily aperture blades come from certain factories or logos on the Helios 44-2. At one point, I almost believed it was true. It sounds logical. Lower quality factories, more problems. But after going through hundreds of Helios 44-2 copies over the years from various factory logos, what I see doesn't match with that belief. The bad Valdai logos had oily blades, but the good KMZ ones had them too. Even the older silver Helios 44 with 13 blades, the version most people consider the premium one, has the same issue. That made me realize the logo wasn't the answer. Something else must be causing these blades to get oily. But instead of speculating, I wanted to test it properly. I opened a few copies from different factories and compared the mechanics side by side. But while inspecting these lenses, even the ones obviously been serviced before, I noticed a detail that almost no one ever talks about. I want to show you this because it's key to understanding exactly how oily blades form over time. By looking at a few different copies side by side, the same pattern repeats. Every single lens, different logos, different years, different factories, had the same thing happening inside. The grease had simply aged, separated, and slowly flowed into the aperture mechanism over decades. No one ever replaces that grease, which is why the oily blades keep coming back. It's one of those things I always deal with when I service a vintage Soviet lens. Because if the old grease isn't removed and replaced, the problem just returns. It wasn't a factory or logo issue, it was physics and time. Even the brands we put on a pedestal, like premium lenses such as Leica R or Contax Zeiss, run into the exact same problem once the grease gets old enough. It's not a Soviet only thing, it's a vintage lens thing. I see it every time I prepare a lens for another filmmaker. Oily aperture blades are one of the first problems people spot on a Helios 44-2. They don't need experience or special tools. It's easy to notice even if they've never opened a lens before. And because it's so obvious, it often becomes the easiest thing to blame. If a copy looks a little flat or lower contrast than another one, many people jump straight into, it must be the oily blades. I've even seen comparison videos where two lenses show different contrast, and the conclusion is immediately pinned on the oily blades, even though the shots were done wide open, where the aperture blades aren't even in play. But once a video gets a couple 100,000 views, that idea spreads and starts to feel like fact.
Once an idea has taken hold in the brain, it's almost impossible to eradicate.
But is that assumption actually true? To find out, I decided to test the lens with and without oil on the blades. I took a clean lens and shot it wide open at f2. Then I carefully added some machine oil to the aperture mechanism to simulate oily blades and repeated the same exact test. I tested it on an ISO 12233 chart for precise comparison and also shot real-world scenes, skin tones, backgrounds and natural light to see how it actually performs in real-world situations. The goal was simple: test the blades directly and see whether they actually change the image when the lens is wide open. And here's what the test showed. Even with oily aperture blades, the lens performed the same wide open at f2. On the ISO 12233 chart, the lines stayed just as sharp, and in real-world footage the skin tones, highlights and backgrounds looked identical. There is no drop in contrast or loss in clarity. It becomes clear that the blades simply don't influence the image when the lens is wide open. The light is passing through the optical path, not bouncing off the aperture. This matters because oily blades are one of the first things people panic about when buying a Helios 44-2. They look shiny, they look wrong, and the internet has repeated for years that they must be ruining the image. It's an easy assumption to make because the problem is visible, while the image quality difference is not. After servicing and testing these lenses for years, I've seen how often people get discouraged by cosmetic issues that don't actually affect performance. This test was about judging image quality by actually using the lens, not examining like a museum antique. I've also seen a lot of discussions online claiming that stopping down a Helios 44-2 with oily aperture blades lower contrast. The common explanation is that shiny blades reflect light inside the lens, bouncing it around and washing out the image. From my experience shooting with these lenses, that didn't make any sense. Physics tells a different story about how lens aberration is affected by smaller aperture. Still, it's a concern many filmmakers have when stopping down for sharper corners or more depth of field. So I decided to test it properly. What really happens when you stop down a Helios 44-2 with oily blades? Does contrast drop or does lens behave exactly as physics predicts? To see what really happens, I ran the same lens through the test again, but this time stopped down all the way to 5.6. At this aperture, the blades have a large surface area exposed, which, according to popular belief, should mean more reflections and a noticeable drop in contrast. I captured the results on an ISO 12233 chart to examine every corner and edge, and I also shot real-world footage with natural light, skin tones and backgrounds, exactly as any filmmaker would use the lens in a shoot. Would the shine on the blade scatter light and wash out the image? Or would the lens perform according to how it's designed? When the lens is stopped down to 5.6, the results were clear. The corners sharpened noticeably, vignetting reduced, and the overall contrast improved exactly as intended. Those shiny, oily blades didn't cause any scattering or loss of quality. The lens behaved exactly according to lens physics. The chart confirms the corners sharpen and contrast improves, and the real-world footage shows skin tones and backgrounds looking clean and detailed. Sharpness and clarity improved across the entire frame from center to edges, giving a usable image that works in actual shooting conditions. Even stopped down, the oily blades remain purely cosmetic. The lens performs exactly as it should, showing the image quality comes from the optics and service history, not the shine on the aperture. I talked earlier about how oily aperture blades do not lower contrast when shot open or stopped down. But here's the part most people never think about. If that grease is already leaking into the aperture, what other issues could it be creating inside the lens that you can't see? That's exactly what I'm exploring in the next video. I'm recreating not just oily aperture blades, but the deeper hidden problems that show up after the grease start to deteriorate. And once you see what actually happens inside a 50-year-old Helios 44 II, it will change the way you evaluate these lenses forever.